All right, the Zoom room is starting to fill up. Welcome, everybody. It must be 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning. That means it's time for coffee hour. Go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're Zooming in from this morning. If you are tuning in on Facebook Live, good to see you out there as well. Let us know who you are and where you're Zooming in from. You could use the chat box here in Zoom, or you could use the comments in Facebook. It's a busy day in Nittany Nation as it's National Signing Day. We hope that you get the opportunity to check out what's going on the Penn State football Facebook page today at some point and see the newest members of the Penn State family and the Penn State football family being welcomed in over there. The Penn State Alumni Association is a proud sponsor of National Signing Day, as we are a proud sponsor of Coffee Hour. And we look forward to talking to today's guest, Linsey Covert. Linsey is the founder and CEO of TEAMology. We're going to talk about her company and the work that she does there in just a minute. You're watching the Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and welcome to the Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. Each week on Coffee Hour, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they are passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State network. We are recording this session and closed captions are available for this event. You can find the information in the chat and in Zoom or in the comments in Facebook. Today, we are talking with Linsey Covert. Linsey is a passionate educator turned entrepreneur with the vision for a better solution that can help children develop healthier connections and relationships while preparing for their future. This passion was developed while she was a graduate student at Penn State in the early 2000s. Her research interests continued into the real world and led to experiences as a teacher, a school counselor, a therapist, and higher education career counselor. In 2012, she had the opportunity to bring her work into the university through an endowment and began her work as the director of project team in the College of Education. While there, she spent time closely working with faculty and students to continue to grow and research the theory and ideas around her original work as a graduate student. In spring 2016, her company TEAMology was one of the first companies to come out of Invent Penn State. TEAMology delivers research-based programming, innovative technology, and training to help educators teach students valuable foundational skills related to social, emotional wellness, bullying prevention, and career development. I'm excited to welcome Linsey Covert to Coffee Hour. Linsey, good morning.
Good morning, Paul. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. Let's start at the beginning. How did you become a Penn Stater?
Oh, geez. I think actually it's a funny story. It was by fate. I hate to admit that it wasn't something that I had. I know there's a lot of Penn Staters that dream of going to Penn State. And in my family, there's a lot of Penn Staters, but I have to be honest, I was heading to UNC for graduate school. And some different things happened that spring. And I found myself in a situation where we needed to stay in Pennsylvania. So I remember picking up the phone. Penn State had a really good counselor ed program, and that was what I was looking to do for graduate school. So I remember picking up the phone and calling in May and saying, hey, any chance there's an opportunity for me to apply and go start graduate school in the fall. And it just so happened that somebody had just resigned and decided to go somewhere else for graduate school. So they brought me up to do a very short process a brief interview. And then I just kind of fell in love with the place, in terms of, just the feel and being a part of something just that was just so awesome. So I ended up at Penn State kind of by accident, but fell in love with it after I had an opportunity to be a Penn Stater.
That's all right. We'll say serendipity prevailed, and
Yes,
for Penn State,
so
we
true.
are lucky that it had worked out that way. After graduating from Penn State with the Master's in Education and Counseling, you spent about the next 6 years as a school-based counselor. What was it about the counseling side of education that was appealing to you?
Actually, I always wanted to work with kids. I knew that. But I really did have a strong interest in youth sports and understanding how teamwork affected kids. And so before coming to Penn State, I actually did a lot of research in sports psychology. I thought I wanted to be a sports psychologist. And so I had visited many graduate schools, kind of thinking I was going to go down that path, but really wanted to gear it towards kids. And I remember being down at the University of Maryland. A guy at that point in time, a guy by the name of Brad Hatfield, had met with me several times. And he said, Linsey, after meeting with you and hearing kind of what your goals are with this, he's like, I really think that you should go into like a school counseling program and just pursue your interests in teamwork kind of through that path. So I shifted kind of what I was doing and where I thought I was going, and decided to do my master's thesis around teamwork and working with kids. So that's kind of how some of the ideas started with now my work TEAMology, but also how some of the passion around becoming a school counselor came to be.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that your interest started as a almost in sports psychology and aimed towards youth. I'm a father of three. All three of my kids at some point participated in youth sports, and I remember my wife and I often talking about how different it was than when we were kids going through youth sports. It seems like the pressure that we put on athletes it gets earlier and earlier in
Mm-hmm.
their time, and I think some of it is driven by this promise, or this false promise that that all kids are going to earn a college scholarship, right? I mean,
Right.
I just mentioned we were talking to some of our newest recruits in National Signing Day. As good as much as people enjoy playing youth sports, the numbers are stacked against you when it comes
Right.
down to all of that. But what was kind of drive? Have you experienced that the pressure to perform is getting on younger and younger athletes?
Oh, for sure. I have a 9-year-old daughter who's playing soccer. She's more into she rides horses, so she's
Right.
probably more passionate about that. But she really does love sports, and so I've absolutely been a parent in on the sidelines. And you know the struggle for me is that there's so many life skills to be learned through sports. And so that's always what I have found to be so powerful for kids. And we tend to we get caught up in the competitiveness and kind of some of these visions of the kids doing things beyond high school and into college, which I think everybody should dream big, right? But I think if we could
Right.
just focus on the value of being part of a team and being part of something, bigger than yourself at that stage, I believe is more important developmentally. But it's such a culture. It was funny. I was up at an event last year. It was actually a social emotional event at University Park, and was talking to an Australian. She was an athlete, and I can't recall, Paul, why she was at this conference, but we ended
Right.
up kind of crossing paths, and youth sports came up, and she was telling me about how in Australia there are like the training for coaches, for youth sports coaches, is crazy.
Mm.
You can't just sign up. Like a funny story. I just got an email last night. My husband's going to coach my daughter's basketball team.
Right.
You can't just do that in other countries. You have to have a lot of training, similar to kind of more of a probably college or professional, maybe not that extreme, but I thought that was really interesting. Her kind of perspective on it was, the development, social, emotionally, at that stage, and I believe that's probably why she was at the conference, is so important. And to just kind of let anybody walk in and coach a team and not really understand the importance of that, it can be tough.
Yeah,
Um, so
absolutely. And then in 2011, you joined the team at Penn State Monte Alto. You kind of left the school-based counselor positions that you've had and joined higher education. What was it about higher education and in particular career counseling that kind of drew you out of the school systems?
at that time, I was actually preparing to form a nonprofit based on some of that original work, and the opportunity kind of presented itself for me to work a little bit in career counseling, which I always had an interest in as well. So I was able to kind of juggle both at the moment, and that's what I ended up doing.
This is the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford, and I'm joined by Linsey Covert. She's the founder and CEO of TEAMology. So what is TEAMology and where did the idea come from?
So again, going way back to my graduate work was really around the team building and counseling around teamwork and things like that with kids to try and understand how that could impact kids in education. And I found myself trying to research programs, products, things that were in the schools that used the same theory, that the teamwork was kind of the driving force behind it. And there really wasn't much. So I started spending, after I got out of graduate school, I started spending all of my extra time, summers, evenings, trying to develop a framework based on that initial research because I saw a need for it in the schools. And just the constant persistence, I guess, of that provided me an opportunity to, as you mentioned early on, pull the work into the university. And as we started to do more formal research and understand the needs in education, we actually had this program, this content curriculum, and I was trying to figure out how was I going to get it out into the world, because sometimes things kind of get caught in higher education. So one snowy March afternoon, I remember just through networking, I found myself in the office of Ben Franklin Technology Partners up there at Innovation Park. And, I did my presentation on the work, which I had done many times. And I just remember them saying, well, if you say yes, you're in. And I was like, in what? And they said, just say yes and you're in. Well, it ended up being TEAMology, which is basically an entrepreneurial boot camp. And it was a really interesting experience. I was amongst, I think, 5 or 6 other faculty members across the university in all kinds of different backgrounds, and the only education one in the room. And so it was one of the most challenging things I think I've done in my career, is to sit through that 10, 12 week boot camp and understand how to take an idea and, really create a business plan from it. But I saw the potential. I realized I was pretty entrepreneurial, just didn't really give myself that name, the entrepreneur, until that time. And I was able to, I think I was one of the winners of the TEAMology pitch, which is their final event that they do. And that opened doors for other funding opportunities, including the Invent Penn State opportunity. There was some funding behind that. And it hadn't even really launched yet. There wasn't the name Invent Penn State, I think, came after TEAMology, but I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think we might be painting the wrong picture of Penn State, though. You decide to come to Penn State a little bit later in the process, and you interview and you're in. You show up at Ben Franklin Technologies, and right after one pitch, and you're in. I'm going to chalk that up to you being talented and not to anything going on at Penn State.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know. I think that it had a little bit to do with it.
So when we first met, you were really focused on the impact of bullying among school-age kids. I remember we had you come and present to the Alumni Council. Did this work evolve out of that? Is it all interconnected?
Yeah, it did. And actually, Paul, I get asked that question a lot, particularly from people at Penn State. And I think what happened was, the endowment was really geared towards bullying prevention, and the work met that need. But we've always kind of had a broader focus. So it's always been around things beyond bullying prevention, really the interconnectedness of how these different skills that we highlight come together and help kids socially, emotionally. And then we take that and we connect it to career readiness. So it's important to have these skills. Bullying prevention is a piece of that, but it's just a part of the puzzle to help kids be more successful.
So what is the connection between social and emotional health and the learning environment, or one's capacity to learn?
So if a student feels unsafe at school, which if they're a victim of bullying, or they're not feeling accepted into the classroom or into the school, just in general into the school, you can't learn. Your brain doesn't allow you to learn when you feel that sense of fear or rejection. Your focus, I don't know if you can go back to feeling that way as a kid ever. But when things happen, when you're emotional, when there's other things going on at home, or with friends or people that aren't friends in school, your brain doesn't want to focus on what's in front of you, which is probably
Right.
academics and learning. It wants to focus on that, what's making you emotional. So it's really important to have some kind of for schools to have a plan to help kids when they feel that way, so that they can get back to learning and be more successful.
So break it down for us. What is social and emotional learning What are the services that you provide? I think if I'm having trouble with calculus, right, I get a
Right.
calculus tutor. If I'm having social and emotional trouble, is that what these services are relatable? Are they, is it like tutoring in that specific area?
So this is a big question. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. When we first launched into the education world, we were bringing with us long research around the curriculum that we were offering to schools, training, materials that were going into the schools. And that was really our focus. And we had put all of the curriculum for teachers in a cloud-based platform. So they went in, logged into the platform, and they were able to access all of this content around the social emotional stuff that we had to offer. As we've changed and evolved, we started to realize, I really started to realize there was a need for some kind of student-based product. So I did a lot of researching and have spent a lot of time meeting with a lot of very talented people over the years, to understand how can we tap into the needs of students in real time and provide real support, and really reduce some of the stress actually, in our schools, on our education system, because they're overwhelmed. When I was a school counselor, I think when I left, I might have had 800 and some kids on my caseload that relied on me as a counselor. And the recommendation through American School Counselor Association is 1 to 250 for a school counselor. So it was a lot of pressure to, be able to meet all of those needs. So the pandemic has actually provided us a pretty great opportunity. As stressful as that has all been, we've been able to really focus on a technology for kids that we've been developing. And kind of like you said, when you're struggling with an academic subject, maybe you need a tutor or some additional help in different ways. We started working with Nittany AI there at the university. I had met with the director there maybe 2 years ago, and I said to him, "Is there any way to leverage AI to help create an opportunity, create a product for kids in real time to get support?" And so we had been working, through through that partnership, and also with Google a little bit, to try and figure out how can we do this. So we have an early stage partnership with Google about a year and a half ago to allow us to build some prototypes, where we started talking to kids the last couple of years about, probably the last year and a half, about whether they'd be interested in talking to a bot. And I think the beauty of it for us is we had already had these 6 defined characters, relatable characters, if you go on our website, that promote 6 different skill sets. And so we wanted those bots to come to life, to be able to communicate with our kids, to be able to provide them real-time support. So we kind of laid the groundwork the last year and a half to 2 years. And then when the pandemic hit, we went all in with it. And we went into the partnership with Nittany AI. We made the decision that this is where our efforts needed to be, that kids, we had enough information before that kids wanted to participate in this. And then we had a really great opportunity to do a pilot last spring when all the kids were home, where we brought 40 or 50 kids onto a Zoom like this. And we opened up an opportunity for them to talk to our character Ruby, who promotes resiliency. And then we kind of collected some data afterwards from the kids to understand how the experience was. And 100% of those participants reported preferring to talk to our bot Ruby over a parent, teacher, or a counselor. So it kind of made us realize, there's something here. We can actually offer support, kind of like you're saying, to all students. And then, we're going to learn through that process which students need more support than others.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating that they would talk to AI before talking to another person, and it's probably a sense of comfort, or it's probably easier to be vulnerable with a technology than it might be with another person, right? Because the technology isn't going to judge you like
That's
a person
right.
might.
That's right. And the exact words that the kids would say. There's no judgment. I don't feel afraid of saying something and being wrong. So when you hear that from a couple of kids, I remember thinking, man, I was a former school counselor. Like, I wasn't sure how to feel about this. But then it just makes a lot of sense because there were methods that you use as a counselor where I would stick a stuffed animal on a chair beside me, and that child would prefer to talk to the stuffed animal over me. So that concept seemed to really have some kind of powerful effect. And we just continued to learn more and more that these kids, we could be, this was a good way to help kids, especially in the current situation that we're all in.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. So if you were to compare the social and emotional challenges that you were hearing from students pre-COVID and compare them to what you're hearing now post in the COVID-19 environment,
Yeah.
are they the same? Are they different? Is the dial turned up on some and down on others? What are you hearing?
That's a great question. A couple of years ago, I think, when I think back to when I first started this journey, you couldn't get a superintendent's attention around social emotional learning. I mean, I'm sure there were some, but generally speaking, it was tough. The focus was much more on academics and other things. And then, there was a lot of stress around school violence and shootings a couple of years ago. And I was actually pulled into some conversations with some legislators and had the opportunity to share kind of why I thought social emotional was part of the solution, and prevention, like making sure that we provided certain skill sets early on was part of the solution. So it was gaining traction, I would say. There were definitely people were more willing to listen to how this could be helpful in schools in a more structured way. And so with the pandemic, I don't know if you've seen some of the statistics are pretty staggering. I mean, children aged 5 to 12, I think this is based on emergency room visits, it went up like 25%. So that's like the worst of the worst. Like when there's a crisis and you feel like you have to take and we're talking mental and emotional health, and you feel like you have to take your child to the emergency room based on a mental and emotional health crisis. And then children aged 12 to 17, it went up like 33%, I think. And this was reported through the CDC back in, I believe, October. So those numbers, I'm going to assume, are probably continuing to trend up. And then suicide rates are trending upwards too. So I absolutely believe that social emotional should be a point of focus for everyone right now, for sure.
Yeah. So so some entrepreneurial ventures start with an idea and a charismatic and passionate kind of founder, and they try to bring that idea to market. Others are born out of research, like your venture has been. Talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial journey, and in particular the role that Penn State played to help bring your idea to market.
Yeah, that's another great question, big question. So like I said, Paul, a lot of the ideas and passion behind this were really based on my original work as a graduate student. I saw this need in education. I found myself kind of trying to build something. I really didn't know what at the time, years ago. And so that I think is what, in terms of Invent Penn State, Ben Franklin Technology Partners, they were able to help me take all of these ideas and all of the work that had been done and kind of focus in and create a product. And so, like I said, I educator turned entrepreneur, but you start to realize that I was very entrepreneurial. In education, I struggled with the structure. I always had lots of ideas. That doesn't always flow very well when you have a very structured environment. So I didn't always feel like I fit into that box very well. And a lot of that started to make sense as some of these opportunities came up. But certainly the network at Penn State has been tremendously helpful and helping me to figure out how to do this really, and then having the right people surround me to be able to do it.
So it sounds like your target market, or the person, the decision maker who buys into the services that you provide, is usually a superintendent or a school board, or at the higher levels. What does a kind of case study for success look like? You can remove the names of the school districts to protect anonymity, but is there a problem that you have faced that kind of serves as this is what we're here to do, and here's an example of how we've helped the school district?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I think we're seeing a trend in administrators really understanding the value of social and emotional programming products, whatever you want to call it. And they realize that if we can start young, if we start early, then some of those behavior issues, those office referrals, things that they're struggling with and that take away from the academic time, this can really help. We have some really great data. Some of our schools are very tight partners, and they provide us with consistent data, just showing a dramatic decrease in behavioral referrals, bullying incidents, and any kind of office referrals. So, in schools talk, administrators talk. They're a pretty big network. So once you start to your product starts to have an effect in one school, it opens the door to go into other schools. And there's also a lot of partnerships that, it's really important to build a reputation and build credibility, and that people can trust you in this space. So that can take some time. I think that's a frustration in this market. But once you get there, you realize just how helpful you can be as a company.
Linsey, we talked about the impact of COVID-19 on the work that you're doing, but it also strikes me that the social inequities and the social justice movement that has now taken hold of our country, and underrepresented populations, and there, we hear about the school to prison pipeline. We hear about all of those things that minoritized populations face in this country. Can you talk a little bit about, what you're seeing from your research, and how minoritized populations might be dealing with these social and emotional issues at a different level than other populations that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in that space in terms of the research, but I can tell you, kind of based on our experience with, we work with inner city schools. We're kind of across the spectrum, and there's a need for empowerment. There's a need for, giving a voice to some of those that have not felt heard, of course. And I think when you look at it so we use this diverse group of kids in our work, and each of those kids or characters represent a different skill set. And it's really important for kids from an early age to feel a sense of acceptance of each other, to learn about each other, and I think that's the approach that we take. And I think it's been very well received. And just recently, actually, we have a partnership now with WQED, which is the home of Mr. Fred Rogers. And so this has been about a year in the making, I think. I think we started the conversation maybe last January. And it's so relevant what you're saying, because we've basically, the vision that they had with this partnership was to create puppets, which is kind of grounded in Fred's work, and to create puppets that could speak to kids and kind of deliver these messages. And then the puppets will be pulled into these media pieces. So throughout this work, we're actually really excited. We're just about ready to launch it in the new year. We've had those conversations around making sure that, so Lamar is our character for Lee. He promotes leadership. Amelia, she's our biracial character. She promotes acceptance and anti-bullying. But there's a sensitivity that we have to be aware of, and making sure that we are providing every, all of the things that we need to do to reach the minority, that population, that those are things that are real, that the voices behind the characters are similar to the receiving audience. So we've done all of that, and we've had those conversations, because at the end of the day, it's a real problem.
Absolutely. When you share great ideas, and you gather people to share those ideas, it inspires other people to share their ideas. In the Q&A right now, Jessica Muncher is talking about her doctoral research, which is focused on gun violence in schools and in relation to school culture. If you're interested, we can talk further. So we'll connect you with Jessica.
Sure.
If you're interested in talking a little bit more
Absolutely.
about that. This is the Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Linsey Covert. She is the CEO of TEAMology. All right, Linsey, on Coffee Hour, we like to have a little bit of fun with some of our guests. And so we have a lightning round that we participate in. So I'm just going to throw some really quick hitter Penn State questions at you, and you just tell us the first thing that pops to mind.
Okay.
So the first is your favorite Penn State memory.
Oh, well, Paul, can I give you my favorite Penn State memory that is more of like a Penn State professional than a Penn State student?
Yeah, absolutely.
So about maybe 6-7 years ago, I was presenting that Penn State does at the time they did something called an Ed Summit. I was presenting some of the work at this Ed Summit, and a man approached me afterwards, and he said, "I really, really like your work. I know we need to talk more." And he introduced himself as Bill, and then I took his card, and I came to realize that he was Bill Eisler, who, if you've watched the Fred Rogers movie, really, that came out last year, I think. I think he was actually, might have been 5 years ago. He might have been just finished wrapping up, but he was the right-hand man of Fred Rogers, and they, one of the main characters in the movie. So that when and now it feels like it's come a little bit full circle. He was also the CEO of the Fred Rogers Company. And now I'm doing work with WQED, which was the home of Mr. Fred Rogers. So it just feels, like it's all kind of come together, but that's a favorite memory of mine.
How about your favorite class at Penn State?
Probably the multicultural diversity class. We were required to go to put ourselves in, I think, 2 or 3 different out of our comfort zone experiences. So I feel like I learned a lot from that one.
Great. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, maybe this is a theme, but I feel like at this moment in life, in this career, it's probably Fred, because I've met so many people that knew him, and I've heard so many amazing things about him. So I would say Fred Rogers.
Yeah, I thought you might say that with the recent connection and all of that. So your most unusual "we are" moment, kind of the unusual or unexpected place where you heard "we are" or someone identified as a Penn Stater. We all hear about the airport encounters, or we hear the Great Wall of China. I was wearing a Penn State hat and someone yelled "we are" on the Great Wall. So what has been your Penn State, your unusual "we are" moment?
So I feel like I've had a lot of those. My husband and I feel like for no particular reason tend to wear Penn State gear when we're traveling in through airports. And so you hear that a lot. But I believe there was a situation where we were actually pulled in kind of past the security line because we had Penn State gear on. Maybe that would have been the most the coolest.
That's great. So your favorite Penn State sport?
Ooh, I like a lot of sports. I mean, obviously I do like to go to a football game to watch football, and basketball. One sport that I actually haven't seen live that I want to see live is volleyball. I've not watched the girls volleyball yet, but I'm terrible at the favorite questions.
That's okay. Well, we have one more favorite question, but you have to check out a women's volleyball game in Rec Hall, in particular when we're playing Nebraska or Minnesota, and it's rocking in there. It's a great environment in women's college volleyball. So. All right, last favorite question. Your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
I'm not a big ice cream person, but my husband loves Peachy Paterno, I think it's called.
Yes. All right. Well, Linsey, we want to thank you for coming on Coffee Hour this morning and for sharing your story. Our alma mater says to may our lives swell thy fame, and you are certainly doing that. You are certainly doing that through your career, and we're truly grateful for all the good work that you're doing in the school districts and through your new company, TEAMology. If people want to learn more about TEAMology, where can they find more information about that?
Sure, it's www.teamology.team. And then we're also, I believe, Facebook and Instagram, I think LinkedIn. So, yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, and guests, thank you for tuning in. It is great to see so many people zoomed in with us and watching on Facebook Live. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you for your support. If you're not a member yet, what are you waiting for? Go out to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thanks for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.